Hello everyone, Carmine from New York here. This is photo class 286. What in the world comes in a case this big? Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Carmine from New York, photojournalist for the last 50 years here in Manhattan. I bring to you all my knowledge and expertise in photography going back to 1973. Please subscribe. It keeps this channel going. And hit the thumbs up button, comment below. What are we talking about today? A behemoth of a 1975 lens. Guys, this is the 6-pound, 3-ounce Gigantor lens from Nikon. Look at this lens cap. It was specially made just for this lens. All right, let's talk about it. In fact, I know you're looking at the teeny tiny camera that's on the back of this lens. It's the Nikon 1V1. We'll get to that in a second and why it's mounted on a 1975 lens. Okay. So much to talk about, so much to go over today. I'm going to show you today, of course, images that I took with this lens and camera combination. All right, now there's a lot of things to know about this lens before we dig in. First of all, a little history. This is the official name for this lens is the Zoom Nikkor 50mm to 300mm. Yes, this is a 50mm lens at the lowest end. You turn a zoom ring. It's not a push-pull, all right? It's not a push-pull zoom, so there's no breathing, which would mean dust would get in, all right? I just want to let you know that this lens is making a comeback in the video movie cinematography world because of its vintage quality, like in this image. And its extraordinary bokeh, like in this image. This is why this lens is coming back. It was originally in the 70s, $3,500. All right, I don't know what that is in today's money. So this lens is making a comeback. All 17 inches of it is making a comeback. Now, here's why this lens is extraordinary. It has 20 elements, 20 pieces of glass going all the way down the barrel, which is all steel, which is why it's 6 pounds, 3 ounces. And it came, like I showed you in the beginning, it came in this Nikon specially made leather case. All right. It's so big and so heavy, you would never carry this lens around on the neck strap of your camera. It has its own lugs. It has its own lugs on either side where you would attach its own neck strap. Okay. Tripod collar on the bottom, which rotates with detents. All right. So if your camera's mounted on a tripod, okay, if it's mounted on a tripod like this, you can turn it. Now that's landscape. You just turn it right here. Listen for the detent. I don't know if you can hear it, but now you're in portrait mode. All right. And then you would go back and lock it in for landscape. All right, all steel. There's not one plastic part on this whole lens. There were a few versions of this lens. All right, this is the 50-300 auto zoom Nikkor lens made in Japan. It's an f4.5 constant from 50 millimeters to 300 millimeters. That was a big breakthrough back in the 60s when this was being developed. There were a few versions. This one is not the ED version. This is the pre-ED. ED means extra low dispersion glass, which was the improvement after this. This lens, one of the things it will give you is a little purple fringe. Okay, but with modern post-processing technology software, you can pretty much get rid of it. Okay, so let's keep rolling. The number one thing I want to tell you about this lens, which currently, by the way, is going for anywhere from $99 to $500. Do not spend $500 on this lens because you might only use it a few times a year, okay, when you feel vintage, all right, and you want to take out some vintage glass, all right, don't spend 500 bucks, all right, spend around 100 for this lens. Remember, it's fully manual, manual focus, manual click, f-stop ring on the bottom, okay? So in fact, this one goes from 4.5 to f22. Now, this is the most important part of today's lesson, is the mount. Yes, it's a Nikon F mount, but there's an Nikon F mount and there's an Nikon F mount. This one is non-AI aperture indexing. All right, now what does that mean? That means that if you try and mount this lens on a modern DSLR, probably going to break something on that mount. This is non-AI aperture indexing, okay? This was meant for 1960s film bodies, okay? Now, this is how I mounted it on my mirrorless Nikon 1 V1. Very simple. Let me just put it down and I can take it apart, the camera. All right, so now this is a Nikon 1 V1 mount, right? This is a Nikkor 1 mount. All right, next on the lens is very simple. All right, this is an adapter. This is the Nikon F mount to Nikon 1 adapter. Right, so I had this stuff because I have my Nikon 1 and I have Nikon glass that I always use on my Nikon 1 V1 camera when I want to take advantage of the 2.7 crop factor. Don't forget, that crop factor made this lens not 50 to 300, but in fact made this lens 135 millimeters to 810 millimeters, giving me compression like I'm going to show you right now in this photograph. About compression, all right? A lot of people get it wrong. Lens compression gives the viewer the impression that distant objects are larger than they actually are. That's the real definition of lens compression, okay? So back to the mount. So now this is a non-AI Nikon F mount, okay? It will not mount without force on your, say, your D3, your D850s, right, your D700s. You will break something in the mount, okay? The easiest way I found to use this was with an adapter to a mirrorless camera. You just take the lens and you mount it onto the adapter. Okay, then you take the camera and you mount it to the lens. Okay. And there you go. Now you have the system that's ready to go. If you are considering using the Nikon 1V1, you have to be in manual mode. You'll save money buying a non-AI lens because people are looking for the AI version, which are out there. Now, there are websites that will tell you can grind down parts of this lens to jam it into your Nikon D850s and D3s, all right? Don't do that, because you'll never be able to resell this. Okay. The reason video guys and movie makers, even in Hollywood, are finding this lens is for this. You put your subject, right? Let me take off this lens cap. This is a 95mm lens cap. Okay, this was specially made for this lens. This is just pure aluminum, made in Japan for this lens. Pretty rare that it's still even attached. Okay, look at the front element. Just gorgeous. The haze in these lenses, all right, is almost inevitable because the oil and grease that's in here, whether it's on the aperture mechanism or on the helicord that moves the zoom and moves the focus, right? Over 48 years, it slowly evaporates. It's a petroleum product. It's going to slowly evaporate, and it has nowhere, the vapor has nowhere to go when it goes, right? So it rests on a element, on a piece of glass. Right? There's just levels of how much haze there are. This copy happens to be pretty good. The haze is minimal. It's there, but it's minimal. With new modern software, post-processing, you can eliminate a lot of the haze, believe it or not. Usually, these lenses, when you buy them, will usually come with an 95mm filter, all right, the Nikon L39 filter. Some of them are multi-coated, some of them are single-coated, some of them are uncoated, all right? It's a piece of protection glass, right, that goes on the front, of course. These are pretty valuable all on their own. The filter itself goes for about $100 to $30, depending on its condition. These 95mm lens caps, okay, same thing. They go for about $50, especially in this good condition. Why? Because they're so rare, and it just screws right on to the front of your lens. Okay. This is a lens hood. It's just a 95mm lens hood It's just generic. All right, wasn't made for this camera. You will get vignetting if you use a full frame camera at 50 millimeters. But since I'm using a 2.7 crop sensor camera, and on all these shots outdoors, I shot them all at 300 millimeters, which is really, what did I say, 810 millimeters. I was well past the vignetting, so I left it on. This camera, you must use a tripod. Not a monopod. I didn't say monopod, a tripod. All the photographs you're watching in this video were all taken the same way. Manual, f8, ISO 100, and today was very... Okay, folks, goodbye from New York City. Subscribe.